I'm Josh.
And I'm Jen. Welcome to the Gospel Shaped Family Podcast.
Each episode brings biblical wisdom and practical conversations on parenting, marriage, and family. And we discuss how to disciple the next generation with a biblical worldview.
Whether you're raising children, shepherding a church, or longing to build a legacy of faith in your home, this podcast is for you.
Join us as we explore how to shape hearts, homes, and churches around the gospel, one conversation at a time.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Gospel Shaped Family Podcast. Well, all of us want a peaceful home, and we want it to be full of joy and happiness and all those wonderful things. So today we're going to talk about 8 battles that are worth fighting with your children in order to get the outcome of a peaceful, happy home. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's going to be a great episode. So 8 battles to fight with your family.
Yeah, so just in clarifying with that, we're not advocating for the kinds of battles that are generated because of sin or the consequences of sin. We're thinking here strategic battles that you choose because they help you accomplish something in your child's life. They're going to become a more godly,
Yes.
mature young man or woman. And actually, some of what we're talking about today goes against the grain of
Yep.
what some parents are doing, because what we're going to talk about, it takes forethought, it takes fortitude,
Yep.
it takes some serious discipline and willingness to, at times, make a child unhappy, because you know that the momentary unhappiness is actually going to help them grow and develop long-term joy
Yep.
because of what it produces in their heart and life.
Yep. Temporary discomfort
Yep.
for lasting joy.
Yep. Good
Yep.
way of putting that.
Yep.
Yeah, so 8 battles worth fighting with your kids. The first battle is the heart battle. And this is the idea that as parents, we want to win over the heart of our children, each and every single one of our children, not
Yep.
just kind of in general, but each child specifically, that we want to have an intimacy, an ease of communication, or maybe ease isn't the correct word, but a regular
Yeah.
communication, that there's not
A comfortable communication.
there's not secretiveness
Yeah.
there. Secretiveness that's a sign of issues, that if
Yeah.
kids are keeping secrets, it's like, okay, we want to get to the heart of what's going on here. But kind of one of I think the indicators with this one is that if there's emotional distance between us, or either of us or both of us as a parent with a child, and we recognize that, okay, things, they feel off, or
Yeah.
it's like, I don't really feel like my relationship with this child's great right now, or is where I want it to be.
Yeah.
Those are the times to say, instead of kind of saying, oh, okay, or it'll get better in the future,
Yeah. They're going through a phase, or
lean in
Lean in.
and do the hard work to figure out what's going on and what needs to change. Sometimes this means, okay, let's just sit down and have a talk.
Yeah.
Let's sometimes it means we might need to make a change as a parent.
Yeah.
Is it because, man, we've been putting in way too many hours, we're just not around? Is
Yeah.
it because we're acting as a parent in a way that our kids are responding to, and they're pulling themselves away? And
Yep.
so sometimes we see adult children who have a distant or disengaged completely relationship with their parent,
Yeah.
and they'll tell you, they don't just do that for no reason. There's always a reason.
Yeah.
Like, what's the reason your children are distancing themselves? Try to figure that out. It could be a sin issue in their heart, and they just want to hide that from you. Or it could be something that, man, the way you interact with them is not something that they like,
Yeah.
and it's good to know that. And then if that's the case, as parents, we have to be humble enough
Yep.
to admit it,
Mhm.
confess it,
Yep.
own it,
Yep.
and change it,
Yeah.
and work for something different. And I think sometimes the best way to figure things out with a child, if there's an issue like this, just ask them.
Yeah.
Like, is there something what's going on? Or is there something I'm doing? Or is there something I could do differently? Or
Yeah.
could I change something that would be helpful? The other thing we've done with our kids is that when these things have cropped up, is okay, we're going to spend some intentional, concerted extra time with one specific child, in ways that are sometimes just be together. And
Yeah.
the being together then in with just enough time over a period creates opportunities to have talks.
Yeah.
And it helps build and blend hearts together. And so, um,
And it lets them know too, like, "Oh, mom and dad love spending time with me and
you're
they care
important.
about me."
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm taking this seriously.
Yeah.
Because if there's a distance now, that's only going to magnify
Yep.
as children grow older. And if there's a distance now, by the time they get to their adult years, it's going to be limited engagement.
Yeah, totally.
I've read a statistic, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but I read a statistic that 90% of the time that we will spend with our children in their whole life
Mhm.
happens by the time they are 18.
Yeah, that sounds about
So
right.
once they hit 18, we only have 10% of the time left. This is face to face
Yeah.
with them over from 19 to whenever we die.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty hard if that heart connection isn't established by the time that they're 19. It's
Yeah.
really hard to make that ground. Not impossible, but it's just a lot harder because we don't have as much in-person time with them.
Yeah.
So, and then the other piece here is we want to win their heart in order to shape their minds.
Yeah.
And so if we don't have a strong heart connection, it's really hard to speak into their mind. And so one leads to the other. So fight that heart battle. If
Yeah.
things are like not where you want them to be with your child, it's worth fighting for that.
Yep, it's worth fighting for that. Okay, the next one is the reading battle. I'm not going down without a fight on this one. But encourage your children to read. And reading is tied to everything from your child's cognitive development to their spiritual development to their ability to focus. So much of life hinges on your child's ability to read. And so many kids today just do not have the ability to um, think critically. They have very short attention spans. Just their ability to even like process information and write and do all these different things that hinge on a really great ability to read. We just see them lacking all over the place. So encourage your children to read, encourage them to read the best books and read to them when they're little. Make reading come alive. And, allow them to like be uncomfortable with like not wanting to read, like that can be a battle too. Our kids are big readers, but sometimes they'll be like, I don't want to read this book, but we're going to be like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. You're going to love it. And just really don't let that one go. Don't let that one go. Encourage them to be readers because ultimately, the book we want them to read is the Bible. And so if we teach our children to be readers, we teach them to just be comfortable in the silence and in the slowness and in the pace that comes with a book. It's going to be a battle that we want them to win.
Yeah. And part of our battle with this one was actually delaying reading while our kids were little.
Yeah.
Because we homeschool, we could do this.
Yeah.
We think it gets introduced to kids too early
Yeah.
when a lot of kids are not developmentally ready to read. And so they have a bad experience early on
Yeah.
and they don't want to read, or they have screens,
Mhm.
and so they have, they're just they can't focus on a
Yeah.
page. I actually read that a lot of colleges are having problems in the classroom because students are coming to college now and they haven't been forced to read a lot, and
Yeah.
so they can't process. They're having a hard time reading a book for class and
Yeah.
processing what it is, so the professors are having to give out, like, the Cliff Notes version, like a page or an
Yeah.
article. That's the
It's
reading for
tough.
class now.
It's tough though because so like our older boys are in college. Well, Jay is in college and then Asher is like, doing
He's essentially a
he's
college student,
yeah.
yeah.
Um high school or college as a high school student and they do not give out actual physical books anymore. Everything is online, and even that is hard on a person's eyes. At least I have a hard time with that. Maybe I'm old or
Now a physical
but
book
there's
beats
something
prove me
yeah.
wrong, a physical book beats an ebook
Yeah,
any day.
from the learning perspective, and I think the physical act of being able to go back and forth. So, like, for me, even when I'm reading, just a book on my own for pleasure, it's sometimes I do turn the page back and be like, "Oh, what was that?" Like, there's, like, something about, like, even the physical this is the distance between when I read this and, like, the pacing of things. I don't know. The actual reading is a hill I will die on.
Well, so we delayed reading
We
with our
delayed
kids,
reading.
and, they would get in between the, like, 7 to 9-year-old range depending on the child, and then they would, like, practically be begging to
Yeah.
read, to learn to read because they knew what awaited them, and part of our battle for reading meant that we would read as a family in the evenings. You would do read alouds during the day
Mhm.
as a regular rhythm, and our kids would then be exposed to the joy and the wonderfulness in the pages. They didn't have
Mhm.
to read themselves, so they could, cozy up on the couch. That
Mhm.
because reading takes work sometimes, thinking work. But if you just get to listen to somebody else read, it's quite enjoyable at times, or really good audiobooks.
Yeah.
And then we would, in the evenings, we would often do family read alouds with some of the best books. We'd save those for the evenings, and that just in that though, the discipline to get the family together and sit down rather than other things in the evenings and daytime for you and then family for us, it translated into them reading on their own, and it
Mhm.
was part of the battle we had to fight from a schedule standpoint because there's always a million options otherwise that you could do, and we built those in, especially in the cold months in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So fight that battle.
'Kay.
Number 3 is the outside battle. Kids are nature deprived today. They are indoor kids. A lot of the reason for that is screens, as screen usage has gone up, outside time has gone down. But our encouragement is to fight the battle and make
Mhm.
your kids go outside. There is so much value from what nature provides
Mhm.
children. It is literally therapy. It is, the kids learn all about God and the world that he created. There's so many things from a child's creative side of things that if they can find a creek or a woods or just areas of nature that they just end up spending hours
Yeah.
just doing and being and enjoying. It's funny, I forget which one of our kids this was the case, but sometimes they would I remember as an infant, they would be, like, crying and cranky inside, and we'd take the child. Was that
Asher.
Asher? We'd
Yeah.
bring him outside, and he would, like,
Uh-huh. I would lay him on the
stop
grass.
crying. It was
Yeah.
weird.
On a blanket. But yeah, I mean, even health-wise, it's so good for your body to be
The
outside and
sun and
you're
yeah.
absorbing vitamin D and your lungs are getting air and your skin. I mean, all of it, just like your body physically. I mean, think about how God created He created us in a garden. It wasn't like And on the sixth day, Adam built a home with a nice HVAC system. Like, no, they were outside in the air and experiencing God's creation. I
Does
mean,
this mean you want a log cabin
yes.
with no HVAC system? I'm in.
I heart our HVAC system. But I'm just saying that it's good to be outside. It's good to be outside. It's so good for you.
This was a battle because this wasn't always the norm for us. We used to
No.
live in a townhome with really though actually our backyard was a big cliff and
It was a big cliff, and then there
it
were
was
rocks.
there really wasn't anywhere. There was
Boys would throw
concrete.
the
Yeah, there was
rocks.
concrete to go outside to. There really wasn't much. And we moved. You may have heard us mention this before. We moved to the country, and our kids they wouldn't go outside because they weren't used to it. And so Jen, I was at church as a pastor. Was at church one day. Jen literally like pushed them out the door, not literal, but
I was
sent them
like, "Have
outside
fun."
and locked the back door and said, "You got 30 minutes." And they stood
It
out
was
there and
just the
cried,
screen
and
door. They
they
were
didn't
like,
know
"What are
what
we
to
supposed to
do.
do out here?" And I was like, "Go, have fun." And they figured it out.
And now we live on a couple hundred acres,
Yep.
and our kids will literally we're like, where is, they'll be wandering around doing
Yeah.
barefoot and whatever, doing things. And
Yes.
they love being outside now. And as soon as the weather turns nice, we pretty much live outside for 5 or 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
We have a saying that we want our kids a good day is when our kids are sweaty, bloody, and tired.
And
Sorry.
dirty.
And dirty. And of course, you can get that indoors, but you primarily get that outdoors.
Mhm.
And that's a learned, valued skill. So we've had to fight for that.
Yep.
And sometimes we still have to fight for that. Like, all right, get off the couch, let's go outside.
Go outside.
But if we lead that,
Yeah.
and it's funny if either of us go outside and sit outside or start doing something outside, our
Everybody
kids often
comes.
follow with
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Charlotte Mason, who does, people follow her philosophy of homeschool. I remember reading in one of her books a while back that, as a mom, as a dad, your desire should be to give your children access to the very best things in life as a part of their education. And so, um, Charlotte Mason would define some of the very best things in life as being access to the outdoors. And so I remember when the kids were little, actually writing down, I still have in my notebook that I want to give our kids access to that. And not only to be outdoors, but to allow them to do things that were just like outrageous outdoors, like not just see flowers, but pick flowers. I want them to pick flowers. I
Funny.
want them to not just like know what a garden is, but to be able to like take the fruit and eat it, like eat right from the garden and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
back in the day when we lived in the townhouse, we couldn't
That was when I wrote it down.
do
Yeah,
that.
that
So
was like
we
a
had
huge dream for me.
so in our instance, to do that, we bought a plot for a community
Community
garden
garden.
and had a little, I don't know, section that we would walk down to and do and use. And
We had planted things
we'd have
and
to, we have to be intentional about going to the park and going on
yeah.
walks. And now it's out our back door. Before it wasn't, but we still did that. We just
Mhm.
had to build it in different ways. So it's
Yeah.
doable for
It's
everybody.
doable for
Yep.
everybody. Even in an apartment, you could plant some flower boxes and let your kids pick those flowers and buy some strawberries and eat them right off the bush. And no matter where you live, fight for your kids to be outside because it's absolutely worth it.
Right.
Absolutely
What's
worth
the
it.
next one, Jen?
Okay, the next one is the screen battle. And you've heard us say it before, but screens are just invasive. They're everywhere you go. And they have the ability just to take over life. And our sweet little darlings, who, when they are outside and they're reading books and their eyes are moving and they're imaginative, you put a screen in their hands and all of a sudden they turn into little zombie children. And so, we will passionately encourage every family to limit screens. So we always have three priorities that we say. We say delay screens as much as you can, limit the amount of time that they're on those screens, and then once they're of an age where they do have a screen in their hand, just monitor what's coming in, monitor what's going out, and just to be good stewards. We have delayed our kids getting phones until they're older. So, generally around the time when they're driving a car is when they'll get their first smartphone, and then that gives them the ability to text and to use a map, and then we can share location and see where everybody's at and make sure we're safe on the road. But in our home, really, we have limited screens as much as possible. So um we have just one television in our house. Maybe we shared this before that for a long time we didn't even have a TV. We would have to like pull it out of the
Mhm.
um,
Closet.
closet whenever we wanted to watch things. Now we have a frame TV that's on the wall, and it's got artwork, so it doesn't really look like the TV is
Focal
the
point.
throne
Yeah.
of the
Mm.
living room.
But we don't want it to be the focal
We don't
point.
want it
Yeah.
to be, yeah. So, we don't really have the TV on. We do have one iPad that we use for like shared school activities. And, sometimes the kids will text their friends or they'll FaceTime grandpa. That's fun for them too. But really, this battle for screens is one that is not going away. And so, as moms and dads, we just need to make sure that we are aligned on what we want to see our kids do and not do on screens. And what we see when they're not on screens is that our kids are absolutely creative. They're creative. They will play games like board games with one another. I mean, art and all of the things that we see from our kids, just creativity. I mean, I could go down the list and I could say for each of our kids, like, this is what our kids do when they're not on screens. And the blessing of saying no to screens is saying yes to so many other worthwhile things, whether it's, teaching yourself how to play the guitar or, one of our kids loves to write novels. And so she'll be sitting there just furiously writing novels, yes, with a pen and paper, not typing it out. And yeah, it's great. It's great. The things that just come, that blossom from picking your battles and saying, we're going to say no to some screens.
Let's take a break to thank Renew Nation, the sponsor of this podcast. If you've benefited from the Gospel Shaped Family podcast, consider making a tax-deductible donation to Renew Nation today. Your generous donations make this podcast and our work to help children develop a biblical worldview possible. If you've enjoyed the episode, you can support us by leaving a review. This helps the podcast grow and reach more families. Now back to the show.
All right, number 6 is the work battle. You need to make your children work. Work at home. As kids, they will, of course, complain that they don't want to unload the dishwasher, that they don't want to do the job, that they should be one of their other siblings' turn, that their friends don't, whatever. I remember not liking this when I was a kid. We used to have to do the dishes after every meal
Uh-huh.
by hand, no dishwasher
Crazy.
was used, and boy, I could be a hard worker today. I am a hard worker, but I
Mhm.
can be a really hard worker because I was trained as a child. As a teenager, I think it's important for your kids to get a job kind of in the 16 plus, maybe even our kids have gotten jobs starting at typically around age 14 or
Yeah.
15 because we want them to earn money to buy their own vehicle.
Yeah.
And then they need money to save for college. But there's, work just in general, a theology of work. We treat work as this thing that's negative in our culture that we want to avoid, we want to retire from.
Mhm.
That we treat the ideal stage of life as not working, and that's just not true scripturally.
Yeah.
Work was created by God before the fall,
Mhm.
It is a blessing. It gives meaning and purpose, of course, to whatever we do. It says glorify God. It's a way to serve others, to love our neighbor, to feel like I matter and I make a difference. And there's just a level of satisfaction that a person has from the work that they do and they contribute from. And so I think in the home side of things, your kids are part of your family, so they should share in the work of your home.
Mhm.
And then work, of course, there's so many purposes and values in that and what it teaches. Work is a
Yeah.
really good teacher in what it teaches children, from responsibility, from the value of money if they're getting paid for something, just from all the virtues and character that is gained from it. And one of the core things with work is that um it 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 helps a child become others centered. It's not somebody doing something always for them, and so
Mhm.
they're giving, they're pouring out, and so much of childhood is the opposite. People are doing for them, and it's the alternative of
Mhm.
that. And so the work battle, we that's running cross grain from our culture. We've essentially said, um, kids shouldn't work. We encourage not to work. We've allowed, we've delayed adulthood. We've moved adolescence well into the 20s, even into 30 years old, and we just delay this side of things. So do that early. You see that as a scriptural precedent, the dominion mandate that God's given in Genesis, and so we want that to translate for our kids.
Yeah. So true. Okay, the next one is the schedule fight. So fight for your family's schedule because your family needs margin. I'll say it again. Your family needs margin. Kids need margin. You need margin. And what we see so often, and it's so easy to do, is just to overschedule your family. And it's easy to do between church activities and if you have sports or school events, friends, birthday parties. I mean, pick your thing, but it is so easy to then look at your calendar and say, oh, I'm full every single Saturday for the next 6 Saturdays or 12 Saturdays. And your family just needs a break. Your family needs margin. And so, that can look like different things. It can look like just saying no to after school sports and saying we're going to have dinner together. It can mean saying no to, well, it means saying no to a lot of things, right? To saying, I want my children, if your children are in school, like a traditional school setting, it might mean saying I'm going to say no to Saturdays so that my children can sleep in one morning a week, recognizing that we're going to church on Sundays. And so I don't know what it is for your family, but I would encourage you to make the decision, make the difficult decisions to say, my family time is valuable. My children need a pause. I need a pause. And to give yourself a family schedule that really is free of hurry, and just is a lot more um, flexible. I was talking with a mom um, a couple weeks ago about busyness, and she said we were both kind of comparing schedules and how I was saying like, oh, I've got a busy stretch, but then we're gonna be home more, and she was saying the same thing. And because they had some sports things, and she was like, sometimes I feel like people almost wear their busyness as a badge of honor. Like, we're so busy. And she said, busyness does not make it better, and busyness does not make you more important. And so she was like, my badge of honor is when we're home. And she was like, that's a big, flex for me.
That takes work in today's culture.
It
It's a
takes
battle that worth fighting
work.
for. Yep.
Yeah. So I loved that conversation with her, because we were so like-minded. We were like, "Yeah." So it was great. But, yeah. So fight for your schedule. It's worth it. It's worth it.
The seventh one is the righteousness battle. I think this could be applied on two fronts. One is your
Mhm.
own walk with the Lord is a fight, because how we are doing in our own heart and in our own life
Mhm.
obviously will create the culture dynamic be passed down for our family, but then be passed down to our children.
Mhm.
And it also applies to our kids, and their decisions and what we see happening in their life. And if we see a pattern of sin or poor choices occurring in a child's life, the time to respond to that is early when they're young and the sapling can be bent.
Mhm.
Um, you think about a young tree. We buy these fruit trees on our property, or
Yep.
these. We just actually got a couple maple trees
One of
last
those is
year.
actually bent out there in the yard. I was just
I
thinking
know. I
about that.
tried. Yeah, I saw that. But you can bend those. You can bend
Yep.
you can bend the limbs if you want them to hang like apple trees.
They can be trained
You
to
could
grow a
bend,
certain
you
way.
put a weight on the branch and it'll bend it
Uh-huh.
down. You could
Yep.
bend them in certain directions, but when they get older and they get bigger, it could be virtually impossible to
Mm.
train a tree to grow in a
Mhm.
certain direction because it's kinda set. It's just they're not it's ingrained at that point.
Mhm.
There's a quote I wanna read to you by a British, pastor from the 1800s. His name is J.C. Ryle. He wrote this in a book called Thoughts for Young Men, and this was an admonition he was giving to young men, and he wrote this: "Habits have long roots. Sin, once allowed to nestle in your bosom, will not be turned out at your bidding. Custom becomes second nature, and its chains are threefold cords not easily broken." Well, says the prophet, can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? They may ye also do good, and that are accustomed to do evil. It's from Jeremiah 13:23. He goes on to say, habits are like stones rolling downhill. The further they roll, the faster and more ungovernable is their course. Habits, like trees, are strengthened by age. A boy may bend an oak when it is a sapling, but 100 men cannot root it up when it is a full grown tree. So it is with habits. The older, the stronger, the longer they have possession, the harder they will be to cast out. Man, that is just super insightful. And
Mhm.
so, this righteousness battle with your kids, God can do anything at any age with anybody, of course, but the earlier the better. And we need to take that seriously if we see habits forming that we know this isn't good long term, or patterns and actions. Fight that battle now
Mhm.
with your kids. All right, the last one, Jen,
Okay,
number 8.
the last battle is the battle for truth. And you want to be the loudest and the first voice in your child's life. And sometimes we have to make hard decisions. We've just talked about the 7 previous difficult decisions, whether it's, screens or books or, time or education or friends, but we want to make sure that above all, we're giving our children the truth. And so we want to prioritize having conversations with our children about difficult topics, about all topics. And so we want to make sure that conversation is regular. We want to make sure that conversations are um, deep and that we're really like probing into areas of life that could be awkward, but things that are compelling, like politics and ethics and your faith and friendships and forgiveness and all of those things. We want to make sure that we're giving our children the gift of truth when it comes to perspective and what are they learning and what does biblical wisdom look like, and that we're really just giving them a breadth and a depth of truth. I'll say it again, truth when it comes to all of these issues. And so, this maybe is encompassing a lot of the things that we've talked about, but really keeping on the forefront of our mind as parents that we want to be um, having those conversations and speaking into our children, and giving them really just a biblical perspective on all of life, which is the truth that comes from, stemming from we have their hearts, and so we have time to be in that relationship, and we have margin in our family schedule, so we have time to have these conversations, and we give them, a biblical view of work, and that plays into how do they see the world and the things going on around them. And so giving our children the truth is really a battle that we're willing to fight. And we've seen really good things from our children. We've had so many great conversations, and we've seen just the fight for truth and the ability to decipher what is true, like what is truly true through the lens of the Bible, has helped in so many different ways. Even like I, think of like our college kids, and they're doing, different things on campus and having conversations with people, but really
Mhm.
like what is true and good and beautiful. And so knowing those things as parents and then taking the effort and the initiative to give those to our children.
So which of those 8 maybe stood out to you the most that this might be a battle worth engaging right now with one or more of your kids
Mhm.
that would be helpful and pay great dividends in the end, even though it might be momentarily uncomfortable or make a child unhappy for a short season? In the
Mhm.
end, it produces great fruit in their life and in their heart. All right, those are all battles worth fighting for.
Totally worth it.
So that does it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
We're honored to partner with the Addisons, and today I want to point you toward their podcast. It's called Culture Proof, and they use a biblical approach to view current events, family, politics, and more. What makes it unique is their biblical perspective. They take the truth from the Bible and they apply it to issues that we're facing today. They don't just discuss problems, they provide practical things that we can do to make a difference and raise our children to follow Christ. Subscribe today so that you and your family can be culture proof. Thank you for listening to the Gospel Shaped Family Podcast. Please share this episode and give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts.